Remnant II places us directly into the narrative of the world of Remnant. Multiple events have unfolded before the traveler stumbles into the root-infested sewers and is promptly rescued. Despite the complex history, numerous secrets and concealed truths await your discovery as you journey forward. There is much yet to see. Still, one cannot truly progress towards their destiny without first understanding their past. The world before us is expansive and diverse, brimming with histories, tales, truths, and lies, intricately woven within and across it. Some of these narratives are yet to be revealed, while others have been known for many years. In essence, it's a single story. A story that starts with the Guardians and the Root. The Root, as far as we understand, have always existed, always yearning to consume all that it has yet to touch. They are a hive mind, a singular entity spread across millions of bodies and forms. They are linked through their consciousness and act as one, enormous and ever-expanding. To counter this threat, each world at risk from the Root was bestowed a guardian, a formidable entity tasked with defending their assigned planet from the invasive force. This eternal struggle spanned across ages. As long as the Guardians stood, the Root could not conquer their world. However, despite their immense power and responsibility, the Guardians were not invincible, and the Root discovered ways to infiltrate and expand their reach. Unlike many other interconnected realms in this universe, Earth had no assigned guardian. Instead, the world was naturally isolated from the cosmic map, thereby safeguarding it from invasion. That safety would be shattered with the discovery of the first World Stone. The first World Stone was found deep within the Earth, encircled by peculiar sigils and runes that would later be decoded. Soon, other stones began to emerge worldwide, and the US government put great effort into establishing full control of their research and understanding. Fearing retaliation or being surpassed by the Soviet Union, the American military took drastic and controversial measures to ensure their success with the World Stone project. Under the leadership of Dr. Harsgaard and his team, the military began exploring ways to interact with the stones and harness their power. Harsgaard's profound understanding of the runic system that composed the stones made him the ideal candidate for leading the research. Through deciphering the runes, he discovered that the stones were connecting lines to other realms, and that some individuals could be imbued with the ability to reach out across the veil and communicate with other worlds and their guardians. Thanks to Dr. Leto, another prominent researcher in the project, it was made clear from early on that the stones acted not only as conduits for energy emanating from outside the planet, but also as gateways to the sources of those energies. Harsgaard used the instructions from the runes to create special test subjects for his experiments. These subjects, codenamed Dreamers due to the fact that they needed to be asleep in order to use their telepathic powers, started being used as conduits to communicate with other worlds and their inhabitants. This process was often extremely dangerous for the Dreamers and resulted in the deaths of many in the early stages of the program. Despite this, the military pushed forward. Wards were established across the country, research facilities dedicated to housing the staff and the subjects for the experiments. Ward Prime sat at the center of these facilities, acting as a hub for many of Harsgaard's experimentations. Shortly after, the experiments started to bear fruit, and places like Ward 13 had tangible proof of communication with other worlds. Dreamers would link up with the respective guardians of the other world, forming strong emotional and psychological bonds with the beings which would allow them to understand the inhabitants of their planet. Soon after initial contact was made, the Root started appearing on Earth. Because we had reached out past the protective anonymity that Earth had been in, the Root had noticed. We had been found. Before armies could mobilize, the planet was overrun in a matter of days. The world we once knew was consumed. These events marked the setup for Remnant from the Ashes, as well as part of the sequel game, Chronos. Later, it was discovered that Harsgaard had been attempting to make direct contact with an entity known as Clavo, whom Harsgaard believed to be some sort of god. Clawbone would lead the Doctor down a path that would culminate in the use of a dreamer to make a connection with Clawbone directly, thus opening the gateway for the Root to invade Earth. Skarsgård would end up siding with the Root and assisting them in their takeover of the planet. In Remnant from the Ashes, we take on the role of the Wanderer, a stranger from a secluded village who ventures into the wider world to face off against a powerful dragon in order to remove the threat of the Root to his people. In their journey, they discover the secrets of the stones, venturing to worlds like Rom and Yesha, which have felt the touch of the Root in their own ways. Along the way, they would also meet two pivotal characters in the story of Remnant: the founder Ford and Clementine. Ford has his own story, which we've already covered, but there are a few things worth knowing about the man who would act as a linchpin in the eventual rejuvenation of the planet. Ford started his career in the US military. His knack for leadership quickly put him in charge of the Dreamer Project, in which he would oversee Skarsgård and his team, as well as the wards and their various research into the stones. Despite his best efforts, Ford was betrayed by Dr. Skarsgård and his plans to bring the Root to Earth. When the day struck and the invasion began, Ford managed to escape to Ward 13 with many other survivors. There, he built a small community, a home for himself and those that remained where they could be relatively safe. In time, he found himself in love and started a family with a woman named Evelyn. Ford, however, had been gifted with a terrible power. Ward 13 was equipped with a world stone of its own, as well as dreamers that had made connections to other realms. Though the dreamers were gone, the stone remained, and Ford used it to travel to different planes of existence in search for a cure to the disease that was the Root. Years passed, and Ford found himself unable to die from age or injury. A great boon at the time, but soon it would become a curse. As those around him aged and changed, he remained the same. His wife would have children, and they would have children of their own. Ford would watch them all pass, slowly secluding himself in his adventures, unable to face the reality of having to watch his loved ones age and die. Evelyn would face her own trials, finding herself being connected to the Root through a link similar to those experienced by the original Dreamers. She would be plagued by visions of destruction and chaos, culminating in the sight of a monstrous Root behemoth destroying her home and all those within. The psychic link seemed to flow both ways, and so the Root would find where she was. Evelyn had no choice but to abandon her home, seclude herself, and allow the Root to link with her as a distraction. She would sacrifice her body and mind, slowly twisting into a being known as the Root Mother, who would later help the Wanderer in their adventures. After losing her, Ford could no longer stand to be near his family. He left the ward in the hands of his granddaughter, Commander Ford, and disappeared into the World Stone. The Wanderer would be tasked with finding Ford, being told that he is the only person who can help him complete his quest and vanquish the dragon within the atoll. They find Ford, and eventually get to face off against the creature. Ford would then return to Ward 13 to help his granddaughter in further expanding the safety of their home for those that remained. This brings us to the end of the base game, leaving the question of what happened to Clementine after the events leading up to Remnant from the Ashes. Clementine, codenamed Subject 2923, was a dreamer in the program when it first began. Only 14 at the time, she made a strong connection with the guardian of an ice world. Her connection was among the strongest, causing her to experience physical changes related to the realm she was connected to. One day, her body was sucked into a portal, leaving a large hole around the area where her bed was. It would not be until the last DLC of Remnant I that we would learn what came of her. She had been teleported to a world called Razum, where her link with the guardian of the world had led her to form a strong bond with the creature, eventually inheriting some of its powers. She became a hybrid of human and guardian, the first of her kind. With the help of the Wanderer, Clementine would find what remained of Skarsgård, now a twisted abomination, completely lost to the Root influence. Together, they would defeat him, and with this act, remove the core of the Root on Earth, allowing the planet to begin healing. Clementine would go on to exhibit the same longevity as Ford and the Wanderer, as well as a few others. She would remain in Ward 13, acting as its protector for the years to come. As the ward expanded, her role became ever more pivotal, taking a part in the leadership along with Ford. That is where we find her, and ourselves, at the start of Remnant II. Ward 13 has expanded greatly, with many new inhabitants and some of the familiar faces we came to know in the first game. Earth is no longer a concern, as what remains of the root are slowly being wiped away. There is hope, and the planet seems to be healing. Now, it's up to the Traveler, the new face for the player, to strive forward and learn what secrets remain of the roots, the Guardians, and the worlds beyond the stones. Well, we are back. Remnant 2 is set to be a great addition to the story of the world, and I will be covering all the lore there is in the game, as well as connecting it to the previous games. If you're into that kind of thing, give me a like and a subscribe, so I can keep making great content like this, for Remnant and other games.